Welcome to Off Script with Sarover and Mum, about the weight we inherit and the freedom we choose. This is a space for honest conversations between a mother and daughter, where we talk everything between love, life, culture, expectations, and everything in between.
We talk about being the eldest daughters, growing up with expectations, and learning to choose ourselves, even when it feels uncomfortable. We're going off script here, real conversations, real experiences.
Just two generations learning together. Let's get into it. So today feels like the right place to start. We're both the eldest daughter in both our families. And I feel like that may have shaped us, our lives, and as to where we are today.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but I feel like maybe if we weren't the eldest daughters, would our lives look different? Or would we have lived differently? And I feel like maybe that's something a lot of people can resonate with. And that's something that maybe me and you should have that discussion.
Yes, totally agree.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, especially reflecting on my own journey, but
Yes.
also realising like you're the eldest in your family too. And as the eldest, you've raised the eldest in another family. But do you feel like your upbringing and just being known as the eldest daughter, that title, did that change the way your upbringing was or shaped who you were at all?
For me, Sarover, I'm from a very large family. To put it into context,
You are from a massive family.
yes, so my dad, he has 11 other brothers.
How many sisters does he have?
There's 6 sisters.
8. So Nanaji has 17 brothers and sisters.
There's 18 of them in total.
Yeah, 18. Wow, that's a massive family.
So for me, I'm the eldest granddaughter in that family. So the eldest female
Yeah.
grandchild. A lot of expectations, a lot of pressure is put upon you when you are the eldest female
Yeah, it's
in
true.
a family, especially cultural families. So when we put it into context, then it feeds down into that family structure as to my dad is the eldest son in that family as well.
Oh, so Nanaji's the eldest, you're the eldest, and then I'm the eldest.
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so my dad migrating from India into England, coming to England, he wasn't just coming for a holiday, he was sent with a lot of expectations, responsibilities.
Wow, that would have been a lot.
Yes. So when he came to this country, he's come from a very different background.
Yeah, because he's carrying the weight of not only himself, but also his family and also the family behind that he's left in India, which I don't know in terms of that context for when he was that age, being young, whether there was grandparents still alive or great-grandparents. That's a lot to carry. And how old was he when he moved here?
I would believe early 20s.
So he was his early 20s. Wow. Okay, so he's come here as the eldest, carrying all that. I'm assuming he didn't have much choice into what he wanted to do with his life. Instead, I'm guessing it was, right, build a life for everyone here, make the money and start a family all at the same time.
For him,
Wow.
from what I remember, for him it was, you are going to provide for all your siblings back home.
Okay.
You have to work to help the family back home. There were so many children behind, and
But-
he was the eldest.
Okay.
So he had that responsibility.
That's huge.
Now, whereas my mother, because her father was in the army back in India, he came to help the British Army here to fight in the Second World War. Because of the bravery that the British Empire had seen in India, they needed strong men to help in the army. So my mum's father came to England to support the army here. And
Okay.
then my mother came through that route.
Okay. So
Very different.
that gives me context into understanding their background. So them raising you, being the eldest now, from knowing, obviously you wouldn't have known at the time, but now hearing what your parents, that's their background. So now you being the eldest, do you feel like you had much pressure or responsibility, anything nearest to what maybe your dad had?
So what I found was, with me, my parents were so busy helping their own families and siblings that I would see my dad stressed,
Okay.
upset, or feeling that strain on him that he couldn't be the father after a long day at work, the nights they were working, and mum's trying to hold the house, the family together.
Did you feel like maybe then you had to step up, being that father role maybe that was missing at home?
I felt that there was that language barrier for them as well. They brought a lot of fears with them. So I felt I was more in survival mode
Okay.
as opposed to being in safety mode as a child growing up.
That's heavy. That's really heavy actually, because now you've not only got survival mode, you've got a language barrier. So not only are you trying to grow up in, I guess, an environment where it's predominantly, British kids, and you're from a very Indian family in terms of traditions. So you're trying to find your own feet, but also be a translator for your parents, also to help them understand what's going on, but also protect. You mentioned that. What's the protect part?
The protect, because I'm looking at my mum, seeing that concern, that worry. Is Dad angry today?
Okay.
Bringing back his stresses from outside. So I wasn't seeing that calm family.
So was there a lot of turmoil at home?
There would have been, yes, there was a lot of turmoil.
Okay. And then that led you to then now being the protector in the family from what could transpire from a dad having a stressful day.
Yeah.
Do you think there were other families who may have gone through this? Because if you've got parents who have come from another country, and I'm assuming going into jobs back then would have been like factory workers or manual labour jobs where, they would be stressed. They're under a lot of pressure and the culture's different. Because you mentioned, I think I remember stories about how our granddad used to go to the pub, and I'm thinking, God, my nana at the pub? Like, he doesn't drink. But I'm guessing they were integrating themselves into what back then was a very racist time, and then bringing all that home. So I wonder, did you have friends who maybe were in this situation?
Going back to the 70s, 80s, there were so many families that were going through what I'm mentioning today, and so many will resonate with my story, my journey.
Okay.
And many are still struggling today.
Oh God. Would you say, but if you weren't the eldest, let's say you were one of the other siblings, the middle child, the youngest child, do you feel like you would have had maybe less pressure being that
Certainly,
protector?
Definitely, because when you're the eldest, like I was the eldest, I felt there were many times I would want to protect my younger siblings from what I could see or what I knew could happen.
From the turmoil that was happening in the household.
And I felt that I would question a lot more, because when you're at school, you're getting to learn a lot more. So you'd bring back those questions home because you want to make sense of what you're understanding and what your parents are telling you at home, or what I found in my experience. We had a lot of extended family that felt like they were your family too, because that's how you were being brought up.
And being the eldest, did you have a voice?
It was always shut down, because I felt that the more you try to understand by asking questions, everyone was becoming fearful that if you asked a question, is this child going to become more independent?
Okay.
Because she's learning, she's growing. But we were too young to become independent. We were just trying to make sense of, we go to school.
So you've got this burden of your family, you've got the burden of being protective of your younger siblings, but now also you're trying to have a voice, you're trying to speak out, but you're being suppressed.
Yeah.
And do you feel that being the eldest, that you were the sort of the experiment for your family? Like, you mentioned all these siblings, this massive family, and you're that first person going through, you're the first child going through school, you're going through friendships, you're going through changing, just growing up as a girl, you go through a lot of personal changes as well.
Correct.
And they're trying to do that, but now you're trying to speak up, you're trying to talk to them, but you're being suppressed. Did that lead to the way your life kind of planned out? Do you feel that maybe when you say to me, oh, I got married at 16, and you say it now a bit more blasé, but you got married at 16. Do you feel that may have determined why then being the eldest, they thought this was the right thing to do.
Definitely. I remember certain family members around me, daughters getting married at 18. That was like normal. It was very normal back then.
Okay, but you being the eldest, you got married off a lot younger because I guess that's all they feared.
And yet, for many families, they thought that was a success, that they've married their children off, because that's how they were measured against their peers, against their society, their community.
But what about school? What was that like?
At school, we weren't even allowed to mix in after school, go to see friends, have relationships, to understand what it's like to have friendships. It was straight to school, straight back home.
Okay, and then being the eldest, was school different for you in any way? Because you've got these other younger siblings coming in, and you're saying your parents had a language barrier. So did you feel school was different for you compared to your siblings?
I felt I was like their parent. I would look out for them. If anything was happening in school, I became that parent that's protecting them from anyone bullying them. I would be the one that ended up in fights for them on behalf of them to protect them.
Wow.
I would be the child that would sit in parents' meetings with my mum.
Wow.
To help explain what the teacher is saying. Or my mum would have to go and speak to somebody in the family to ask them, can you please come to my child's meeting to help explain?
How did that make you feel? That you were the one who had to step in as a parent at such a young age, when your siblings aren't that much younger than you either.
No.
How did that make you feel sat there?
Back then, everything was made to feel normal, that this is how it's done. So as children, we grew up so fast. See, many children of my age will say that we thought this was normal.
But I guess you had, what else were you comparing to? You didn't have social media, you didn't have these TV shows that we watch, or other podcasts to listen to, or, you know, I can open up my phone now and start talking. I could type in, what is the eldest daughter syndrome or the eldest daughter theory? And I could read up so much about it and learn and challenge. But I feel like we've been given that space in my generation where we can challenge it. So, and it's really interesting hearing you talk about being the eldest in your generation, because you raised an eldest daughter as well. And do you feel that what you went through may have changed the way you brought me up? For example, the pressures you went through, how did you feel that it was with me? Because it's really interesting talking to you about this, because you're the one who raised me.
Yes.
But I have my own perceptions of being the eldest.
See, I felt from being suppressed, not being allowed to have the voice or having any independence in my childhood, because it was controlled by parents and relatives. So my parents didn't really get to say much at times either, because others were telling them how they should raise their children.
Yeah.
So I felt that I was able to give my children more independence through school, doing a lot more activities, like, you know, the kickboxing, the netball, the music.
We had the hobbies, we had the sleepovers,
music,
the trips, the travel.
Yes, which we were not even allowed to have friends over. So I felt there was so much more that I was doing for my children. But then, even doing that, it was still being frowned upon.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because it's true, you did try to raise us differently. And I will say that out of a lot of the wider family, you did try to raise us differently. But I know that came with a heavy judgment on the back of it. And I do want to say that I appreciate you stepping out of the mould to keep us away from the traditions, because we wouldn't have lived the way we have. I can definitely say, you know, we managed to do so much more and not have to worry about what others thought, because you allowed that for us. You took on the burden, being the eldest and setting it going forward, because you're living life for the first time. You're being the eldest daughter for the first time, a mum for the first time. And us kids, we follow what our parents do. So you did break that. You did go off script there, because you didn't follow what everybody else was following.
I didn't want to.
You didn't want to, but you made that choice with a heavy heart. And I know that came with a lot of backlash. I saw it growing up.
No, I was judged.
But it's interesting because you tried your best, and I totally get that. But for me, being the eldest, I feel like it really has shaped me. And I feel like if I wasn't the eldest in our family, I may have been in a different place in life. I may have lived differently. And it's interesting because the pressures are so different in my generation. For example, I feel like my childhood was cut short in a different way because I felt like being the eldest, we didn't have like the mother-daughter. It's more like we became more like friends. Like we spent so much time together that you would talk to me about everything and anything. Like I would know so much, you know, about dad, the girls, you know, everything. And I feel like maybe I could have been sheltered a bit more. I do feel that sometimes. And I feel like with the girls, I feel like I stepped into a parental role at such a young age, which seems interesting because obviously we grew up as a family unit. But I feel like when you and dad did divorce, I then stepped in as a parent because you two are navigating now. How do we survive? How do we navigate? How do we cope? Living separate lives, bringing up children separately. So as you two are navigating that.
I believe you were at 18 around that time.
About 17, 18, yeah.
University, yes.
And I feel like that's when I stepped in and thought, oh my goodness, if this crumbles, they're trying to figure out life.
What to do next.
What are we going to do? And I do feel like that's when I took on the emotional responsibility of the girls. And I feel that I started to step in because you two are trying to survive. You two, and I feel like you were trying to navigate life in a whole new way. But the family unit was still going on underneath all that. So I feel like that's what happened to me. For example, I remember, you know, sitting with the girls doing like personal statements for uni. I remember having to have those chats about certain things. And I remember then when we started to go to family functions, I have to make sure I was there because if I'm not there, people are going to judge my family. We're the first divorced family in this. We are the first divorced. Yeah.
First
I'm
female to be divorced.
Exactly.
In this big family.
So you're the first female to be divorced in this massive family. We are the eldest, and my dad's the eldest in his family.
Yes.
So not only that, we're supposed to be, you know, the ones that people look up to. We're supposed to be that model family.
And they did as well.
And they did.
They did.
And then when that happened, I feel like we were all then having to make sure we keep up appearances, make sure our reputation's intact, because not only do we reflect ourselves, we reflected our grandparents, we reflected your parents, you reflected the Sidhu family, for goodness sakes, which is massive. And I feel like at that point, that's when my childhood kind of got pushed aside, and I didn't want to go to certain places. I didn't want to be sat at people's houses having tea and talking. Who wanted to do that? And I feel like I protected the girls by allowing them, like, no, girls, let them do their thing. I was like, Mum, I'll leave the girls behind. It's not because I didn't want to be with my sisters.
Yes.
It's because let them do what they want to do.
So you became that protector.
I became the protector of them in a whole different way. So that's why at family functions, it would be Bali and Sarover. At certain, I don't know, parties, Bali and Sarover, certain trips abroad, Bali and Sarover, because dad's not there anymore. Dad's now living a separate life, obviously co-parenting. My sisters are trying to have their own childhood. I did not want that to be cut short for them. But then also I didn't want you to be seen in a negative light in the family. And I feel like that's what happened to me. And I feel being the eldest, you take on so much responsibility. You put others first. And I feel like that's a trait we all learn. We put others first. But if I wasn't the eldest, would life have looked different? Would I have chosen a different path in life? Would I have had less restrictions? But also I feel like the emotional toll of being the eldest affects your mental health so much. Because we wouldn't be at those family functions happy. I'd be there anxious. Yeah. I'll be there on edge. Make sure we look a certain way. Make sure no one knows, you know, financially it's going to be tough now. Come on, we've gone from a 2-parent household to 1. Not only that, I'm at an age now where I'm looking at getting into relationships. But what is a relationship now? And you may not know this, but for me, I was at an age of, we think about long-term relationships, eventually marriage, but the unit I know has just broken down. Divorce has just happened. So what is stability? I was questioning so much back then. And I feel like a lot of kids who come from divorced families and being the eldest, you almost have all this weight on you. But what I've realised, going through all that, having a different upbringing to the girls, it's made me who I am today. Because when I look back on that, how much have I learned from? How much have I grown? Things I've developed in myself. I now can sit here today and be like, actually, do what, going forward, the eldest doesn't need this responsibility because I represent myself. I don't represent you, and I don't represent the wider family.
Yeah.
And some may listen to this and think, but you do, because you are a product of your parents and how you live reflects them. No, how I live reflects me, because if I think like that, again, I'm taking on so much burden that I don't need as a human. I, like you, have this one life to be a good human, to be respectful. And that's what I'm saying. We still respect our upbringing. We still respect our parents, our culture, but we have to be able to drop the responsibility to live a life ourselves. Because what did Bally want back then? As a kid, how did Bally want her life to be? How did Bally see her future?
Well, I didn't see myself getting married at 16.
Exactly. When you look back. And I didn't see myself being the one standing next to my mum for so many years on my own.
Yeah.
If I felt like I had a choice, I might have been with my sisters a lot more.
Yes.
But then again, you would have been left on your own navigating everything. So it's a catch-22 almost. But I think going forward, I think us eldest daughters have to realise we do have a voice.
Yes.
We do have goals. And we do have emotions. And all of that leads to us being able to put ourselves first. So I think it's a lot being the eldest.
It certainly has been.
Yeah. And I think a lot of being the eldest for me it led to a lot of people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't putting myself first, I was putting our family unit first. I think that dictated a lot, meaning I people pleased to be seen as the good one, to be seen as our family's still okay, our family's still seen like up here with everybody else, because I didn't want them to see the cracks. And do you feel like maybe...
It's very painful.
Yeah, it is painful, because people pleasing, you almost abandon yourself. So what I've realised is responsibility of being the eldest doesn't necessarily need to mean self-abandonment. I feel that maybe a lot of us being the eldest do abandon ourselves. But going forward, we can still carry responsibility, but also be able to meet in the middle of what do we want as well. And I think that's what I've learned, is realising what do I want to do, but also keeping that responsibility and navigating it differently, because we all have a choice. You didn't have a voice growing up, but you have a voice now.
Yeah.
And I feel that maybe that's a conversation maybe for you to have with your parents one day.
Yes, it's taken a very long time, because back in our time it was very, very different. Our upbringing was very different, because like I said, our parents came from different countries, migrated, they had their own fears, their own responsibilities, they had their own expectations. So for many of us from those years, the 60s, 70s, 80s, even till this day, families are still migrating. So many children will understand, they'll resonate with those fears and how they've had to be the parents to parent their parents.
That's
They'll
interesting. They had to be the parents to parent their own parents.
Yeah.
Wow.
They'll understand that. So, and we didn't have all this information available to us today that we can read and understand what happened back then to us. So we normalised it all, and we were in not safety mode, survival mode. And then what's happened in our relationships, it's still survival mode. So we became people pleasers. We were sacrificing a lot to make things work and just powering through to the best that we knew. So for me, even though I was going off script in making things better for my children, putting aside the expectations that were levied onto myself through my journey, but there were still situations there that my children have gone through.
Correct.
And they felt that pressure, and they felt expectations, like you've mentioned many a time. But Mum, I felt that pressure. I felt that expectation
Yeah.
was still like a domino effect. It still came through to you.
And that's another part of my life. I feel that it transpired into everything, into education. I felt like I had to be top of the class. I felt like I had to achieve the best, because if I did, then everybody in the family would know. And then my family got known as, you know, oh, they have like Sarover's so clever and all this. Oh, Bally's daughter is, you know, Bally's daughter is achieving this. But I was crumbling under that pressure to hold it all, because no one then started to say about my sisters after. It's like, oh, she did this. It was always because, oh, being the eldest, it was just part of those conversations. And I feel like it went into friendships. I felt that I had to be a bit more of a leader in my friendship groups, which backfired a lot of the time. I learned a lot through those friendships. But then into dating, my goodness, would I ever date anybody out of the culture? Dating wasn't even a thing for me growing up. I'd be too scared. I was told, you know, the person you date is the person you're going to marry. And that's how you brought me up.
Yes.
But with the girls, it was different.
Because as time evolved, it started to, like we say, water down. It started to change.
It did. But I feel that
you had the pressure.
This is what needs to change going forward. This script of being the eldest has to change, because I should have been given this. I should have been allowed to feel that I have the same opportunities as my sisters. I should have been allowed to feel I can live a similar life to my younger sisters.
See, looking at all of this, I'm not even sure if it is the eldest. I feel as though it's expectations of elders, family. I felt that, was it the parents that...
because look at my life, Mum, with my sisters. How can we say that this was expectation of the elders? It wasn't. Your expectations of us were so chill, if I'm going to be honest. You had more expectation of me being the eldest, but look what you said. As years went on, it watered down. So for me, sat here, I took on being the eldest, did have responsibilities, did cut my childhood shorter, it kind of limited me into opportunities, because I felt that I had to go down certain career paths. I had to achieve the best in education.
So I'm touching upon like the expectations of, because I was the eldest and I had my children first, everyone kept looking towards me, and with our family, even with the parents, the relatives, it was always like, oh, Sarover's achieving. Everyone just kept looking towards us, and it was a judgment as well. So I felt that
pressure
was
that
massive.
pressure.
And we was that family that everyone looked up and looked towards. And as the children were coming through later in other families, it was like, oh, Sarover.
And imagine, how did Sarover feel going through all that all her life? Even to this day, being the eldest, I finally, and it's only in the last year or two, I've finally been able to drop being the eldest. I've finally been able to drop people pleasing and expectations, because it crumbled me. It led me down a path where I hadn't even fallen in love, because I was following the expectations of a tick box. Because being the eldest, if I married the right one, I married well, my sisters could do whatever, marry whoever, go through relationships, anything, but it wouldn't matter, because people only spoke about Sarover. And that pressure of being Sarover was not easy.
So do we blame your granddad for being the eldest sibling in his family?
It's not even about...
It fed through.
Do you know what it is?
And then to you.
When I look back at it, it's not about blame. It's not about anything to do with that. It's now, how do we change this going forward? We shouldn't allow the burden of being the eldest to be a thing anymore.
No, it shouldn't be.
Because each one of our siblings, even with your siblings, we are all doing life for the first time. We should be able to protect each other equally. And do what it is. I think it sometimes actually does come down to the role of the parents. Because I feel that if parents keep everything separate on this side, and they raise kids to just put happiness first, 100%. No matter what other people think, life will look very different. And I think that's what we've learned.
Yeah.
You've learned from what your parents went through. I've learned through what my parents have gone through. And my future kids hopefully will learn from me.
Yes.
Because we're not going to carry on the eldest daughter traumas and pressures throughout the years to come. Correct. Because eventually it has to change. Because we realise how happy and freeing it is when we don't take on the burden of being the eldest daughter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And these conversations are so important because, like you said earlier to me, my voice wasn't heard when I was a child.
No, it wasn't.
It was just cut short, suppressed. Adults took over. And this is happening in so many families, so many households, even to
this
today.
day.
Yeah, till this day.
To this day. And it's sad.
It's very sad.
But we can take being the eldest as a badge of honour.
Yeah.
We can empower ourselves through it. And actually being the eldest, maybe we're the ones who are able to lead change.
I totally agree with you, because look where we are today.
Exactly. If you're listening and you're the eldest daughter or the eldest child in your family, and you're trying to navigate change and rewrite the next chapter of your life, then this space is for you.
Even though we weren't taught to choose ourselves, you are allowed to choose yourself, even though you weren't taught to do that.
So this was our first episode together, where we were having an open, honest conversations about both being the eldest, but in different generations. And how did you find that? Because there'll be others listening to this. There'll be other mothers and daughters, or mothers and sons, or fathers and daughters, fathers and sons listening to this and being like, they just spoke about everything they went through, being the eldest, and the burdens of responsibility, and it's emotional. And how did you find that?
Well, my heart goes out to everybody, because I know it's not easy. It brings up a lot of trauma.
I could see the tears in your eyes. Yeah.
Brings up a lot of trauma, a lot of emotions, because again, you do feel for your parents. You know it wasn't easy for them, what they had to go through. But at the same time,
It's okay.
you did struggle. I suffered.
But
many have suffered as well, like myself. But we were strong. We were strong. We came through that.
You're sat here as the eldest in your family. I'm sat here as the eldest in my family, and we're having this open conversation to make change, for others to have these conversations, to hear each other. Because why? Because going forward, the future generations will benefit from us having open conversations and going off script together.
Yeah, we need this. And we need it for everyone out there as well. To touch those hearts, bring strength, and bring independence and freedom.
Yeah.
For everyone to be strong again in themselves. It's needed.
Thank you for being a part of this conversation with Sarover and Mum. And if you feel that this conversation resonated with you, just know that you're not alone. Whether you're questioning expectations, learning boundaries, or starting again, just know you're not behind.
Thank you for sitting with us, joining us in our conversation about being the eldest daughter.
If this episode spoke to you, or you feel that there's others out there that you could share it with, do follow and subscribe to Off Script with Sarover and Mum. And we look forward to you joining us for future episodes on Off Script with Sarover and Mum.
We'll see you next time.